This is Harry Judd for Boxing Social in partnership with Empire Fight Store. It's fight day. Eubank Jr. and Liam Smith. Delighted to be joined by David Haye, all the way back from Costa Rica. David, first time in person, mate. How are you?
I'm not bad. I'm good. I'm feeling nice. It's good to be back on British soil. I've been away for a little while, and this fight has really got the juices flowing. You got Chris Eubank Jr. He wants to make a statement, and Liam Smith isn't playing around. He's tried and tested. He's been there. He's done it. He's a former world champion. Comes from a fighting family, and this in Manchester is a sellout. All the tickets are sold, live on Sky Sports box office. This is what it's all about, and this is the type of event that Chris Eubank Jr. needs to bring the best out in him. I believe, his two biggest fights, that he's lost, Billy Joe Saunders and George Groves. If you actually look at those fights and review the fights, it was definitely a tactical, strategic issue. It wasn't like he couldn't punch hard enough, or his chin was too weak, or he didn't have the cardio. He just paced himself incorrectly and lost on points. If you watch the last couple of rounds of both the fights, and you didn't watch the first 10 rounds, you'd think he was dominating the fights. But he's learnt now. He's 32 years old, and he wants to make a statement. And what a great occasion to do it on.
It's been brilliant, I think, the whole production that Boxer have done, the behind-the-scenes stuff and things like that. I think they've played on the characters so well. I will obviously touch on Thursday, the press conference. I mean, it was personal, it was deep to say the least. I just want your thoughts on it before we go into it a little bit further, David.
I loved it. I loved the personal side of it. I loved the fact that there was no holds barred. It got very personal, very some would say close to the bone, some would say it was over the line. But when we're talking about pay-per-view events, you need something that triggers people. You need something that makes people wince. And there was a few comments that made me wince. I'm in Costa Rica chilling. I was like, oh God, I can't believe you said that. But that's what you want. You need that controversy. You need people to go beyond what's the respectable sportsman-like thing to say. Very rarely do you get a pay-per-view event where both fighters are saying, yes, wish you great luck, hugging each other. They want people, they want the fans to be divided, and they're very, very much divided in this fight. Chris is a bit of a favourite, a bookie's favourite, but a lot of people who know a lot about boxing send me messages saying, Chris is going to be outpointed here. Smith has got a solid game plan. He's been there, done it. He's tough. He's not weight drained. There are legitimate arguments for both sides, and that's what you want. It's a trade fight. It's a 50-50 fight, and it's a fight the fans have demanded, and they've got it. And it's just fortunate that both fighters are in great health. They looked great on the scales yesterday. Both of them tip-top shape, no excuses, no problems, and we're going to get ourselves. I think the first round is going to be pivotal. The first round, who establishes their jab, who gets close, who can put the first dent in the other opponent, is going to be very, very much a gunfight early doors, and I'm the buckle up and strap myself in for it.
Well, you've flown all the way back from Costa Rica to watch this fight, so you're deeply interested. Looking at the two fighters as well, obviously Eubank Jr. now with Roy Jones. Liam Smith was quite positive in terms of he wanted Roy Jones in the corner. He believes that if Eubank fights the way that Roy Jones has treated him the last couple of fights, it plays into Liam Smith's hands. What type of fight does Eubank have to do tonight?
I think against Liam Williams, for instance, his performance against Liam Williams, a comfortable points decision win, got a couple of knockdowns. That performance, I'd worry going in against Smith. Williams didn't seem to be firing all cylinders in that fight, and it looked like it was a sparring session for Chris. It looked like he was out there just practicing some stuff. He was going back to the corner. It looked like he was just enjoying a fun sparring session, and that's all good and well. But it's fight night now. This is pay-per-view. You're the main event. You've got an opponent who's coming to win, And maybe the learnings from those fights he's going to put into practice here. It definitely didn't look like, for instance, against Williams, that if his life was on the line to get a knockout, he would have fought that way. Yeah. He'd have fought very differently. He hurt him a few times and took a step back, almost as though he wanted it to go the distance. He wasn't trying to knock him out. And that shows ultimate confidence. It's something that Roy Jones used to do in his prime. I remember when he fought, who was it? The Jamaican, and Jamaican light heavyweight world champion. He literally went the distance. He put him down and apologised, hugged him, and carried on. You can be Mike McCullum. That's who he fought, Mike McCullum. And when you have ultimate confidence, you don't worry about getting the knockout. And if you're working on something specific, if you're working with a new coach may say, okay, we're not going to learn anything from a first round knockout here. Let's under the lights, let's practice your long range moving. Maybe he's going to use elements of that, or maybe he's going to go back to what he used to do, Chris, and just come at him, with all guns blazing. But the fact that Smith is worrying or thinking or caring about what happens, who coaches Chris or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Chris is in the ring. He's the guy who's very much in control of what happens when that bell rings. So I think fighters can look too deeply into the coaching methods and how they're going to train and who trains them. They need to focus on themselves, and then Smith needs to focus 100% on becoming the best he can be on fight night and not worrying about what Chris who trains with Ronnie or Roy. It's irrelevant. The bell's going to ring, and he's going to need to be at his very, very best.
You mentioned Eubank there. What does Smith bring to the table? Former world champion. It's 60% mark. I don't get that jive from Eubank. I love the entertainment factor. You're smiling at it and all, but he needs to be 100% or 110%. Ronnie Davis told me. What does Smith bring?
He brings solid fundamentals. He brings somebody who, he doesn't have any real weak areas. There's not one element of him you go, he's chinny, or he's got no stamina, or he can't dig in when the going gets tough. There's no element of his game that you could really pick massive holes in. Having said that, I don't believe there's anything exceptional that's 100% world class. That he's, for instance, the way Chris pushes down the final straight in fights, that's a skill. That's something that is very rare. The fact that he can throw these crazy combinations, he's got that real fast head work, and he's got a granite chin. I've seen him hit with some devastating shots in the ring and sparring, and they bounce off him. So he's got world-class punch resistance. I've never seen him really badly hurt. Even the fights he's lost against Groves and against Billy Joe Saunders, he didn't appear hurt or decked or badly wobbled. So in terms of resilience, it's world-class. So I think the difference between the two is Chris has shown elements of and attributes that I'd consider world-class, and Smith are just rock solid. He's a top 10 rock solid former world champion. So it's a very, very close fight, and I understand why people are saying it's 50-50. That makes perfect sense. But it's, both fighters have shown they've got heart. They can come through tough spells. But this is the fight that I believe Chris Eubank is going to come out of and look like the fighter that we've always known he is, but he hasn't quite just broke through yet.
What's next, though, if Eubank is successful? That Conor Benn fight's always going to be there. It's always going to be spoken about. But world titles, I think Boxing Purists would like him to push for world titles. What do you think's next for Chris Eubank Jr. if he's successful?
I've got a feeling, I don't know what's happening with the Conor Benn situation. Nobody appears, everyone I've asked who normally know what's happening don't know. It's all up in the air. That would be a fight. After this fight, if Chris gets the victory, there's so much hype surrounding that fight. There's so many people's opinions. Some people think he's innocent. Some people think he's guilty. The jury's still out, literally, so we don't know. We're all just speculating on what, from whatever internet site you've read your information from. So I think in an ideal world, I always hope the boxer is innocent. I always hope that there was no foul play and the boxer's innocent. And if that is the case, what a great fight, what a great storyline, what a great hype that fight would be. Can you imagine that in the summer, getting that fight? Obviously, it's a bit further down the line. It would have been a little bit more time for Benn to mature into a heavier weight. It's very, very interesting, and I'd really like to see the fight. That's bigger, believe it or not, than a lot of world title fights that are out there. Significantly bigger in terms of pay-per-view numbers, tickets sold, interest. I definitely think Chris is in that stage where he wants the marquee fights. He's 32 years old. He wants these big pay-per-view fights, generating millions of pounds, and securing his future. And he's in a good position.
Will either man retire if they lose tonight?
It depends in the manner. If it's a split decision,
there is a rematch clause, obviously, and Liam Smith has said, look, if he gets the rematch, it would be back in Anfield. That'd be fantastic if that happens. But Eubank has always toyed with, okay, if I can't beat so and so, I might as well not box. Do you think he'd pull the towel if he loses badly?
Losing badly, yeah, but losing badly is a stoppage loss. If that does happen, he'd have to reevaluate what he's doing. He'd have to reevaluate, his future, and is he made for the game that he's put himself into? And but that's to stop Chris Eubank Jr. You have to be, you've got to be one of the very best in the world, and if not the best in the world. And we need to know. Out of these two, who's going to be taking that next step towards world titles or these big fights? Liam Smith, he's making all the right noises. Apparently, he's in tip-top shape, and he's got a game plan. He knows what he wants to do. He's sparred with him before. He's got an inside knowledge. He understands what he's in for. And, it's just, I love fights like this. I love these fights where you've got rock solid arguments for both sides. And it's all about, getting that first bell ringing.
Just a couple more from me. AJ, possible link up with Derek James. Just your thoughts on that one, David?
Thanks. I hope the new link up works for AJ. I hope he finds what he's looking for. Strategically, from a mentor point of view, I hope he has the trust in his team to follow instructions in the gym, in sparring, in the fight. It's all that. It's down. Every fighter requires something different. What works for me might not work for him, and vice versa. It's down to he's at that stage now where he can pick and choose any coach he wants. He can live wherever he wants in the world. So the fact that he's looking at sort of relocating and starting somewhere different I think is a good sign. I think he's looking at breaking the old routine, the old habits, the old training environment, and wants to start something new. I think it's a good sign, and I think it means that he wants to make a difference. He wants to make a change. That he realizes what he was doing in the past wasn't good enough. His losses to Andy Ruiz and his 2 losses to Usyk. Maybe there was some similarities in the build-up in training, conditioning, the sparring, the intensity of the sparring. Maybe they were very similar, and he's realised that's not good enough. It's good enough to beat 9 out of 10 of the guys, but there's going to be that 1 out of 10 that just can best you. And I think that the fact that he's looking at changing things up is a very positive sign for him and his future.
Possible Franklin is his opponent to come back from. I think that's probably the best opponent, to be honest. He's done well against Dillian Whyte. What do you make of that matchup?
I prefer Dillian Whyte.
Do you put back straight in with Dillian Whyte?
Straight in with Dillian Whyte, yeah, for sure. Dillian Whyte's coming, off that victory against him, and AJ's coming off a points loss, 2 points losses against Usyk. I think it's a great style matchup. It's got history. It will sell. Not many people. Frank is coming off a loss. It's like if you are the number one in your mind and you want to prove it, why fight someone who's coming off a loss against someone that the public will want to see you fighting? I'd much prefer to see him fight Whyte than Franklin.
Just 2 more. Fury-Usyk. Do you give Usyk any hope in that fight? There is discussions going on for this year. Fury-Usyk. Do you give Usyk any chance in that fight?
A victory. Yeah, he's undefeated. He's an undefeated, undisputed cruiserweight. He's beaten Anthony Joshua twice, something that Fury hasn't done. Yeah, you have to give him a shot, 100%. He's very awkward. He's strong. He's got heart. He's got great technical abilities. You know, he can punch a bit. He managed to steady up AJ, who's a big guy. So yeah, you have to give him a shot in the fight. Obviously, the bookies will favour a good big man always beats a good little man, but occasionally, you know, an exceptional little man can beat the good big man. That how great is Fury and how great is Usyk? This is such a perfect matchup. You know, southpaw against someone who's a switch hitter, who's much bigger. You know, it's very, very interesting.
And a potential return to boxing, David. I asked you before, potentially managing fighters in 2023. Tell me a little bit what you know.
Possibly, yeah. So I'm talking to a few people, just you know, strategically guiding people to maximise the revenue. You know, there's so much money in boxing that fighters don't know about, don't understand. They understand, hold a whole setup of a promotional entity about worldwide rights, radio, TV, merchandise. There's money everywhere, and a lot of fighters don't know. They just sign a contract, don't know what's in it. So I'd like to assist fighters getting the best deal that they can get for what they're bringing to the table. It's all about fighters, you know, getting the lion's share of the pie that they generate. If you're generating something, you should get your pay should be in proportion to eat what you kill. You know, if you're bringing in pay-per-view, if you're bringing in ticket sales, radio, sponsorship, okay, first of all, you got to know what it is and what my slice of it is. And a lot of fighters, unfortunately, are unaware because they haven't been in the game. Fortunately, I've been in the game for 20 years as a promoter, manager, boxer, worked with pretty much every television network all over the world, whether selling the rights or doing direct deals with them. And I can help some fighters just maximise and get the most amount of cash for putting their life on the line for everyone's entertainment.